Well, you might have noticed in the order of worship, or no, in the online lack of information, that this was the sermon for Rent, that two people lovingly fought to win. Elena Westbrook, who's back there in the choir, love her, and Jodie Zoeller, who is our lovely board president. And they each gave me different ideas for sermons, and then I said, okay, I'm going to put them together. So this is what we have. And I do want to also say a special thank you to Elena and Jodie for the hard work that they have given to this church. And then also I want to say that they've both been amazing supporters of my own work here. So this is a work of love. Happy May Day. Okay, well, happy 6 days after May Day. May Day just passed, in any case. Now, as a Texan and a fifth or sixth generation American, it depends on the side you look at, my experience of May Day, or Beltane, places me definitively into the camp of fascinated dilettante, which is where most of us really are, to be honest, with these ancient European traditions. Beltane, which can be spelled however you want to, apparently, falls on or around the beginning of the month of May. In the ancient Celtic calendar, the equinoxes and the solstices are important, and there are days between those that are called the quarter days or cross-quarter days, which are equally important. There are two that you know of very well. One is May Day or Beltane. You've heard of these things. The other you might have heard of is called Samhain or Halloween. Yeah. So what happens is when you are midway between a solstice and an equinox, you have one of these cross-quarter days. And so the other two that I'm not going to talk much about are Imbolc, which is in the early year, and Lunasa, which is in August, and is spelled in a way that I will not inflict upon you, but let's just say I did have to look up the pronunciation. The word Beltane means beautiful fire or bright fire, and the celebrations often involve bonfires. Couples leap the flames, cattle are driven between bonfires, and even the maybush, which is separate from the European maypole, is shrubbery that is decorated with colorful paper, with flowers, with small bits of shell or egg to look bright and springy and perhaps even fiery. And what we're going to do today is create our very own maybush. And I'm going to go ahead and start passing around a basket right now. And in the basket, you're going to find little paper butterflies. These are seed paper, and they have a clip on them. And later, I'm going to tell you some stuff to do with them. There's also writing implements in the basket. So if you don't have one in your pocket or your purse, take a marker or take a pen, hold on to your paper butterfly, and I'm going to pass those out starting now with the help of the ushers. So as all these butterflies are making their way across the room, I'll go ahead and keep talking. Like most truly ancient traditions, Beltane is anchored in the intense, survival-oriented reality of agrarian life in prehistoric times. If you did not reap the harvest, you had no food to eat. If you did not feed the cattle, they would starve and die, and you would have no cattle, and you wouldn't get milk or eventually meat and leather. So, Samhain marks the gathering in of crops, kind of like we're all done, this is the start of winter. Samhain marks that vital work that has to be done to gather it all in so you survive the winter. But Beltane, at the other end of the year, on the opposite end of the year, is marking the vital work that's done to create those resources. Beltane says, I know you've already planted some strawberries, good job, but if you don't get your garden in the ground now, it's going to be too late soon. Remember, we're in the northern British Isles. It's cold. It's a short summer growing season. And it also says, this is the time where all the winter pasturage that our goats and cattle have eaten up is totally done, and it needs to regrow, but the hills are now not snowy, so let's drive the cows out into those fields where they can get yummy, good, green, healthy food, and the rest can regrow. Now, But there were these other traditions around fire. Those were kind of layered on top. It could be that the fires were begun as a way of burning off brush so that they could get the cattle into the hills. It could be that people just like fire, and we really do. We love fire. I've had all kinds of thoughts. Why would we drive cattle herds between two huge bonfires? This is a big Beltane thing. I'm like, is smoke bad for fleas? I don't know. But apparently, it's very important that you drive your cattle between or lead them around a bunch of bonfires, and then they will be protected for the rest of the year. So that's good news for the cows. So, the origins of Beltane far outdate even the arrival of the Celtic peoples. I'm talking about the Celtic calendar, to be honest, but far before any Celts ever came to the British Isles, stone cairns show that nearly 4,000 years ago, there were already Beltane celebrations taking place in the British Isles. These were probably rituals by the smaller and darker complected Pictish folk, who were the first natives of the British Isles. As their societies moved from hunter-gatherer to settled growing crops communities, they used their observances of the seasons and the stars and the moon to shape their calendar year for planting and reaping. And then, as we said, they layered meaning upon these simple agricultural responses to life until they just come to represent spring turning into summer, sex, fire, flowers, protection, and much more. As creatures of the earth, we changed ourselves. We changed humans so that we could live and gather food better, and we formed covenants and promises with the earth. We promised the earth, if you sustain and nurture us, then we will honor and protect you with these rituals. It seemed like a good deal to us. Being humans, we are easily confused. And sometimes we start thinking if we don't do the rituals, nature will not uphold her end of the bargain. No bonfires? Fine. No summer.
Contracts and covenants.
Oh my God. She has not seen my sermon.
I really haven't.
But covenants. Covenants are different from contracts, right? We know that. Covenants are weird that way. Sometimes a covenant will call to us whether we recognize it or not. In a contract, as we learned earlier from Henry Nouwen, when one side forgets their obligations, the other side has no further need to hold them up either. And so that can mean all kinds of things. Sometimes it means when a contract is broken, everybody goes their two ways. Sometimes it means that when a contract is broken, the other person thinks not only do they not have to have the obligation to this person, but they also have an equal and opposite reaction of, now I have to be really mean to you, right? So who needs all that? Let's talk about covenants instead. In a covenant, a human covenant, when one party forgets or neglects their obligations, the other party maintains their own promises and invites the other one back into covenant, into relationship. Although a contract gives security, a covenant gives you security and something we need so desperately, it gives us hope for the future. A covenant says we can break and we can repair. We can be wounded and we can heal. A covenant is a calling into relationship instead of a calling out. So, a covenant only ends when the people in it end, if it's a healthy, strong covenant. And even then, there are covenants which outlast us. Nature will not, in fact, cancel summer if we forget to lead the cows between the bonfires. And love, human love, animal love, earth love. Love is a covenant that long outlasts death. Covenants and hope and spring. Young Greta Thunberg. Maybe you remember her. She was 15 years old, and she began holding vigil every Friday outside the Swedish Parliament, holding a sign that said, "School strike for climate change." Okay. She just stood out there every Friday. She skipped school. And after a while, people noticed, And after a while, some other students started showing up on Fridays. And after a while, there were gatherings around the world on a Friday of over 1 million students who walked out of their schools to say, can we please pay attention to this vital, important thing that is literally life or death? So Greta Thunberg knows a few things about despair, and she knows a few things about hope. And I want to share a quick quote with you here. The one thing we need more than hope is action. Once we start to act, hope is everywhere. So instead of looking for hope, look for action. Then and only then, hope will come. I've been thinking about covenants as we all prepare to embark on new changes as this church goes through the process of losing a minister and gaining a minister and moving into a new season in its time. There are covenants that we have which will remain. The difference between a church or a faith movement and a cult is that if it was a cult and I left, you would all follow me. And I love you, but I don't want to be a cult leader. It's not in my wheelhouse. So what we have here instead is a beautiful community of people who will remain and hold what is important to this church in your minds. You will hold our covenants. Think of what we say at the beginning of every service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our covenant. This is our covenant. Love is a covenant, and service is our prayer. Well, service is action. And I think there are times when we look at any part of our life, and there are parts that fill us with anxiety. We might feel a little despair because we don't know how to fix them. I think that's true in church life as well as anywhere else. It's true in businesses. I know that there are problems that we have that we want to get better at. We want to have a big, thriving religious education program with tons and tons of kids. And it's a little scary for those of us who have been here for a while, and that's still not happening, and we're kind of trying to get ourselves together and figure it all out. The good news is, we're not alone. I'm not the only one working on it. And now that you've heard me talk about it, maybe you're interested in it. And what I say this for is that what I'm going to ask you to do with your butterflies today is, on one side, I want you to write a hope that you have for Community UU. And I want you to be, no names, I want you to be 1,000 times honest. And if your hope comes from a place of fear or despair, how do we just keep being a church in a world that doesn't really care about churches? How do we pay our bills? How do we find great RE? How do we make sure that our ministers are amazing? How do we make sure that our community takes care of each other? These are all the questions we'll be answering. I want you to just write a hope on here, even if it comes from a place of anxiety or despair. A hope for this church. And then I want you to turn the butterfly over, and I want you to write one action that you, the person here, will do. It could just be ask a board member. It could be sign up to do something. It could be join the choir. I mean, it can be anything. We don't require you to give us your time, talent, and treasure to come here. We love you as you are. But at the same time, it's just us here. There's no big outside body who is going to save us. If you believe in God, that's helpful, but we still don't think God's going to pay the bills. And if you don't believe in God, then you know perfectly well that we need to take care of ourselves. And we need to plan for the future of this church and bring all of our action into play for these hopes. So that's just a small thing. I mean, if you want to write, I'm worried about this, and so I want to take it over and become the guru of it, just feel free to write that. Maybe do put your name. No, don't, I'm kidding. But do come tell us. But I want you to do that. I'm going to do the same. So let's take a few minutes to do that. So some of you may have noticed that your paper has little bits of stuff embedded in it. Those are flower petals and flower seeds. And each of these each butterfly contains the seeds of snapdragon, petunia, beard tongue, daisy, thyme, poppy, catchfly, maiden pinks, and chamomile. So, what I hope to do with these, after we enjoy them and look at them and you remember what your hope was and what your one small step of action is, then they are going to be planted and there will be wildflowers at Community UU. And I am just going to consult with Deb and Dick and make sure where we need wildflowers. So these are your hopes, and we are going to plant their seeds right here in this place that you have made beautiful, that you bring spring and summer to, that you care for and nurture through the lean times. This is the time for us to understand we need the ferns that bloom quickly and spread their glory, and we also need the time to grow those deep roots so that we can reach up high like the bamboo. And I thank you. And I just want to end with a quick little prayer. Spirit of life, who we know by many names, bring your gifts of creativity and new vision to this community. Let us look to the seeds, look to the flowers, look to the fruit, and look to the compost. Let us understand that our life is a series of seasons, and life in this community has its seasons as well, but with good care, with a great covenant of love, we will all grow and flourish. Amen.